Greetings again, friends. Well, I hope that you have subscribed to this channel because there are many things that I am thinking of doing in these videos. So make sure, if you haven't, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you'll be ready for the next video. But if you were with me last time, you know that we introduced this subject of jealousy. And the danger of jealousy, part 1, was that first video. And as I studied jealousy in the Bible, I understood that there really was so much information I needed to divide it into 2 videos, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But the danger of jealousy part 1 is one you should go back and look at if you haven't seen that yet. But today we will get into the danger of jealousy part 2. So when jealous thinking begins, it just really, if it continues, then it becomes this state of jealousy. And that is what leads to obsession and resentment, and it just eats away at any relationship. So you just should go back and think about what I introduced in jealousy, and you might even want to look at the whole series on the danger of, like the danger of freedom that I had done, or the danger of honor that started this series. Go back and look at that one if you want to understand more. And really, if you think about that one, you might want to go back and look at the To Be Free poem that I did. Now, that poem was in reference to Independence Day and freedom that we can have in Jesus Christ. So that's a great one to go and look at as I read that, and you even see the fireworks display in that video as well. But the danger series is a good one to look at, and I really talk about these pitfalls or dangers that come from these things. And of course, again, those dangers or the pit you can fall into is that freedom. With that, it often leads to a pit of apathy, and you don't want that. Or honor often leads to a pit of pride, and you have to be careful who you honor. And of course, jealousy often leads to a pit of obsession. And so these are dangers that come with these things as I'm talking about. Now, in studying this in the Bible, there were some interesting things that I learned as I did. And there are several underlying words used for jealousy. Jealous or envy are often translated and used interchangeably. But if you do a study of the word jealous and its various word endings, you have 49 times that jealousy is used. Jealous or its derivations are used, and 41 different verses they're used in. Now, I thought it was a very interesting fact that there was one word for jealousy only used 5 times, and it was in referencing God himself. And that was exclusively for him. So it got me thinking, and even in looking at all of these references, I noted that 29 of the 49 references refer to God's jealousy. So that actually leads me to announce that I'm going to have a third video dealing with jealousy, and it's going to discuss Lord willing, it will be something called this discussion of God's jealousy, which is the jealousy of God. And you may not have thought about that before, but that'll be interesting. So stay tuned for that. But in thinking about the jealousy of man, let's just consider this danger from biblical examples to finish up this part of the jealousy of man. And next time we'll get into the jealousy of God. So let's consider a few things. Now, we looked at some Old Testament examples last time of the danger of jealousy, just generally being a bad thing. And I won't review those, but consider a couple of New Testament verses here as well. 2 Corinthians 12:20 is one, and it says, "For I fear lest when I come I shall not find you such as I wish, and that I shall be found by you such as you do not wish, lest there be contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, backbitings, whisperings, conceits, tumults." Okay, so there's a pretty bad list of things that was possible that were mentioned, jealousies being right in the middle. Another such reference is Galatians 5:20, and it says, "Idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, outburst of wrath, selfish ambitions, dissensions, and heresies." Now, friend, that's right there in the middle of the works of the flesh, and comparing that with the fruit of the Spirit. So you can go look at that in Galatians 5 and understand more. But jealousy is one of those things that is a work of the flesh and in that bad list. So again, in the Bible, it's often used interchangeably with envy. It is mentioned as envy in the 7 deadly sins that many religious groups talk about. So we know that there could be a distinction made between jealousy and envy, as often is. They often say that envy is wanting what you don't have, and jealousy is fearing to lose what you do have. And so there's some distinction there that's important, but note that in the Bible, some of the same word, underlying root word, can be translated jealousy or envy. And so this is what I will explain going through some of the verses. But let's look at some aspects of this. First, let's see jealousy between siblings. Now, a great example of this is what happens to Joseph because the jealousy of his brothers. His brothers grew jealous of his dreams that he had and nearly killed him, but they ended up selling him to slave traders, and you know what happened with Joseph if you know the biblical story there. Look at Genesis 37, verse 11. It says, "And his brothers envied him, but his father kept the matter in mind." So the brothers just got jealous because of what Joseph talked about in his dreams and how it was like them bowing before him. And so that fleshly jealousy came out of them, and they wanted to hurt their brother. And we saw that they were off tending to things, and Joseph was sent to go and give them supplies and word from home. And in Genesis 37, 18 and 19, you see, "Now when they saw him afar off, even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. And they said to one another, 'Look, this dreamer is coming.'" So you see that jealousy working in their heart and mind. And you go further in Genesis 37, verses 23 and 24 say, "So it came to pass, when Joseph had come to his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him. Then they took him and cast him into a pit. And the pit was empty, there was no water in it." Now, this coat of many colors was one that Joseph's father Jacob had given him. And perhaps this was something that provoked the brothers to jealousy because he got a special code and the other brothers didn't. And, this happens with perceived privilege and other things within families and among siblings. And so this was happening here with Joseph, especially because of his dreams that he was telling the family. You look down further in verse 26 and 27 of Genesis 37. It says, "So Judah said to his brothers, 'What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh.' And his brothers listened." Now, much can be learned here if you study this, and you could see how envy and jealousy led to this whole tragedy with Joseph, though we know God was working through it all. But you can even learn how what Judah did there was important, and he became the line through which the Messiah would come. And that's an interesting study there that you can think about further as well. But jealousy and envy worked in this family actually before. The example of sibling jealousy with sisters had to do with Joseph's mother and aunt. So Joseph's mother Rachel and her sister Leah had this jealousy, and there's all kinds of issues that happened with how Jacob had married both of them and been deceived by Laban, and you could look at that. But Rachel and Leah had problems, especially because Rachel was barren, but Leah was bearing children to Jacob. Now remember, Jacob's name became Israel, so these are the children of Israel. So the history here is important. All right, so we look at the jealousy here with siblings between Rachel and Leah. Genesis 30 verse 1 says, "Now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, 'Give me children or else I die.'" Now, as if Jacob could do that, because God had shut up her womb for teaching his purposes in the family to her and others, and even us through the scriptures. But you see this sibling jealousy played out in this family with brothers and sisters, as I mentioned here. And then secondly, there's this jealousy of a spouse, and this is often tied to a spirit of jealousy. Now, this is probably the primary way of jealousy that we are familiar with or think about. It's that jealousy that happens with a potential spouse or in a romantic relationship, and you succumb to jealousy because of another person being involved. Well, you could look at many biblical examples here and historical examples, but really, I just want to point out that it became such an issue that there was an interesting law. In the Old Testament, under the law, there was something called a grain offering of jealousy. And listen to this just a little bit. You can find this in Numbers chapter 5. Verse 29 there says, "This is the law of jealousy. When a wife, while under her husband's authority, goes astray and defiles herself." Now, this is an interesting law looking at it, and you can see that husbands would often get jealous, thinking that a wife was guilty when she may not be, and they might be jealous because she did do something inappropriate with another man. So this is all part of this law. And if you go and look at it more, you understand it. It says, in talking about this spirit of jealousy, verse 14 of Numbers 5 says, "If the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife who has defiled herself, or if the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife, although she has not defiled herself." So this is introducing this grain offering. You go further in verses 23 and 24 there. It says, "Then the priest shall write these curses in a book, and he shall scrape them off into bitter water. And he shall make the woman drink the bitter water that brings a curse, and the water that brings the curse shall enter her to become bitter." Now, this is fascinating and interesting how this was done. Look at verse 25. It says, "Then the priest shall take the grain offering of jealousy from the woman's hand, shall wave the offering before the Lord, and bring it to the altar." Now, this was called the grain offering of jealousy. And it was a way for God to judge, particularly whether a woman was guilty or not, to take away these feelings and obsessions of a husband. If she was guilty, that there would be consequences, or if she was not guilty, that he would be not having any reason to be jealous, because God would judge there. And so that's an interesting thing to think about. If you've never heard of that, you should study Numbers chapter 5 more to learn more there. But in addition to the sibling jealousy and the spousal jealousy, you have number 3, the jealousy because of success. Now, this is an interesting jealousy thing that happens in danger, because it's quite common if you think about it. In school, with children and rivalries that exist, that's part of the definition of jealousy. It could come through athletics. It could come through just kids doing better in school than others, or even in the workplace, it can come when someone succeeds and does a better job than another. And so it usually involves someone being overly critical to try to cut someone down, and to make them be worse if they're successful. It's just a means that jealousy is probably lurking in that person's heart, if they feel like they have to cut someone down or be overly critical of them just so they can feel better about themselves. Now, that's a problem. You could think about that more and see that. But I'm only going to mention one verse here just for sake of this video, and it's Proverbs 23:17. It says, "Do not let your heart envy sinners, but be zealous for the fear of the Lord all the day." Now, that's interesting, and that will be something I address more in the next video on the jealousy of God, because jealous and zealous are very similar and even have a similar root to them. So that's interesting. But thinking about that, people are at different places in their lives, and some seem to be better off than others. They are, but sometimes even if a person doesn't care about truth or right, they seem to not have problems or be successful. And this has been a problem for many, as even many righteous, as they've looked at people who don't seem to have trouble where righteous people seem to have trouble. Now, there's more we could talk about there, and even those who went to the Lord to ask this question. In the Psalms, we see that they were able to see the end result of those people, even though they seemed to prosper. You know, that question is out there. Why do the wicked prosper and the righteous seem to suffer? And so that is a common thing. But God has his purposes to transform people to be into the image of Jesus Christ. And certainly Jesus Christ is the one who died to pay for our sins. He's the one that was buried as dead and then defeated death when he rose from the grave. And friends, if you want victory over jealousy or any sin in your life, you must believe in Jesus Christ and what he did to pay for that sin. It is not necessary for us to succumb to jealousy and all of the negative things that happen with it if we simply trust God, if we simply believe that He has our best in mind and His will is for us to do, to succeed and to please and glorify Him. You could look at some videos I've done on giving God glory and that being important. But friends, I trust that this has been something for you to think about more, and that you'll stay tuned for that next video on jealousy, which you might even find more challenging. But like this video, share it with others, and be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you'll be ready for the next video and getting into that next aspect of jealousy as it relates to God. Thank you for watching today.